Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to another one of my episodes of William Wallace for America. With me today is Eric Caron. This one is going to be sure to please. I know I say that a lot, but that's because I look for good guests like this, and I'm lucky to get people like you, Eric. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill. Looking forward to the conversation. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're going to have some good conversation. I may be adjusting my lighting in just a minute. So if you see me doing stuff like this, that's what it is. Love your background. I got my American flag on one side, and then with the flag that you don't see that shows up on the other side sometimes is my my Whiskey Rebellion flag. So I don't know if you know about the Whiskey Rebellion flag, but that's on the other side of my American flag.
Nice, good.
So
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, Bill. I look forward to the conversation about America and where are we at here in America and where we're going.
Well, you've got a post, and I got to tell you, when I saw this post, I went, "Ooh, golly, that's a little emphatic to say that we're on the precipice, I guess, of World War III because of the missile strike in Poland." Which now that's a couple weeks ago, so some people might say, "Well, that's so a couple weeks ago, and World War III didn't happen." But you've got some bona fides and some credentials that I would like for you to share with our listeners, so people can kind of see where your mindset is and where people go from here.
Yeah, Bill, thanks again for having me. I spent 25 years as a special agent with the U.S. government, both domestically as well as internationally. I served in New York and Boston, Washington, D.C. I worked with Interpol. I served overseas in Dubai as the DHS Homeland Security Attaché in Dubai, handling covert operations involving Iran, China, and Russia, trying to prevent those countries from gathering nuclear, biological, chemical, missile technology for their programs, and did a lot of undercover operations in that area. I retired as the agent in charge in the state of Rhode Island for Homeland Security investigations. Wrote my book, Switched On, The Heart and Mind of a Special Agent, dedicated to all men and women in law enforcement. Taught at the Massachusetts Maritime Academy on Cape Cod. And now I do some security consulting in East Africa in the area of transnational crime, helping those nations in the area of transnational crime and money laundering. So I'm a money laundering expert. And that's a little bit about me.
So your book is Switched On, right?
Switched On, The Heart and Mind of a Special Agent.
The Heart and Mind of a Special Agent. All right, I'm gonna put that on our banner here in a second. The Heart and Mind of a Special Agent.
Yeah, it's a glimpse behind the badge, Bill. Most people don't get a chance to see what it's like to be an agent for the U.S. government, and I give them that glimpse behind the badge. And it's sometimes it's not so pretty. I talk about investigating the CIA for obstruction of justice under Bill Clinton. I spent about 4 months at Langley involving a technology transfer case involving China. And the CIA went behind our backs, my backs, and gave the targets of that case a heads up because there were sources of theirs. And so the book is dedicated to our men and women of law enforcement, and I hope people get it, and so they understand that police officers, local, state, and federal, as you know, Bill, stand in the gap between good and evil, and they're willing to die for you and I, and we haven't given these law enforcement officers really the respect that they're due. And so my book is dedicated to them, and I hope people get it and see the good and the not so good of law enforcement. And we've been too quick to judge law enforcement officers these last few years.
So your book is dedicated to the good ones.
Yeah.
Now, and I agree with you. We've been too quick to judge all police officers. even though there are some that give the badge a bad name. Overall, they're good. They're good ones. But the other problem is that right now, especially what we're finding with this Twitter dump, that a lot of our FBI agents weren't really on our side. So
Yep.
we got to look at that. But before I let you answer that question,
Yep.
where can they get your book?
Well, Amazon, of course, has it, and all the other usual sites. And then, of course, my website, switchedonlife.com, and people can get the book there. And they can get a lot of the articles I've written. I write for the Blue magazine out of New Jersey. And I do some, a lot of TV and radio interviews. And again, I like to be able to give the people out there, the American people, the world, a glimpse about the good and the not so good. And it's not good right now. I have friends in federal law enforcement still and local law enforcement, and the morale is bad. I can tell you that. I just spoke to I don't want to tell you, a police department on the East Coast, a large police department on the East Coast official, and he said it's on a scale to 1 to 10. He gave it a 2. He gave it a 2, and this is a large police department on the East Coast, and he's a 25-year veteran, a lieutenant, and he said it's not good right now, and it's unfortunate.
So, what administration did you start with?
Good question. I interned under Ronald Reagan.
Nice.
Yep. And then from there, I got.
What administration did you end with?
Okay, so Barack Obama.
And there's probably a gray area, because I'm sure, even though your time working for the government ended, you still used your passion to keep in the same space for the American people. But I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. Sometimes I like to do that regularly, only
Please.
because I listen to my listeners, and a lot of my listeners will email me privately, or they'll say, "Well, why didn't that guy ask this question?" So I kind of know what they're asking sometimes.
Yeah. Bring it on, Bill.
What makes you able to divulge or share information now? Why are you able to talk about some of this stuff now?
Yeah, so I'm obviously even it's funny. It's a great question. And I'll answer that question, but that question really goes to the heart of the present day environment involving the press and the duty that they have to report and to be independent, as long as they're not harming national security. And so in my book, I made sure that 99.9%, if not all of it, was in the public domain, in the area of cases that I highlight that were on the front page of the Washington Post and the New York Times. I kept it, I kept it in the public domain. I mean, so meaning that the cases had already been brought out, and I was basically highlighting the behind the scenes actions taking place of the federal government. So no information, no classified information that I've divulged. I've not divulged
You're
any
sharing more
classified
things.
information.
So the way you're sharing, just to let our listeners know, the way you're sharing, and you can, by the way, check the band at the bottom and make sure that that's all right for you. The way what you're sharing now isn't classified information. It's more sharing a direction using your beliefs and your experience from years of being behind the scenes with
Yeah.
people in a way that they need to be aware of what's going on.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's so much information out there. Like, I when I tell people there's over 1,000 joint terrorism task force investigations going on tonight. There are over 1,000 terrorism cases going on tonight. People are like, whoa, wow, how'd you get that? Well, Director Wray mentioned that 6 months ago before Congress, that there was over 1,000. And I know because I did joint terrorism task force cases and I managed them myself. So I understand, and I'm taking the information that's public plus my experience, and I can tell you that the threat today is greater than ever in the area of terrorism here in America, with
Mhm.
open borders, with Afghanistan. Bill, there's 14 terror organizations operating tonight in Afghanistan. Tonight, Osama bin Laden's son is still alive, and he's still talking like he wants to take some revenge. Osama bin Laden's son. So I'm presenting information that I know personally from my years on the job. That's not classified, plus public domain information, and sharing it. And it, I think the American people have a right to know. They do have a right to know
Mhm.
that the threat is real, and people have to get switched on and understand that 9/11 was a wake up call. That our officials' number one concern is to protect priorities to keep us safe. They failed us on 9/11, and right now our government is failing us with these open borders and then the woke DAs and police chiefs here in America right now. We Americans are dying by the thousands. 23,000, wrap your head around this. 23,000 plus Americans died last year from homicide.
Unbelievable. Now
Oh,
that would devil's advocate here. That would play in the hands of the people who want to get rid of guns because they say, "See, 23,000 people died," and of course, it's not at the hands of all at the hands of guns. But they'll use those numbers to bolster their argument against
yeah.
the Second Amendment.
Well, yeah, good point. And then I often like to say, look at London, look at the UK. Guns don't kill people. People kill people. And in the UK, you know what the number one instrument of killing is? Because there's no guns, knives.
Okay,
People are dying in record numbers in the UK by gangbangers and others by knives.
by knives. They've outlawed guns, but they still have knives. Now,
That's
here
right.
in America, more people die of hammers and knives and all those things put together than guns. But I don't want to take you way too far from where you're going with
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and so I just, America needs to understand that the threat is real, and that I often ask, America still the land of the free, home of the brave? We lost in 200, I think it was 246 years. This great nation's been around for. We've lost millions of people, either killed or injured, to protect us for our freedoms. And right now, our freedoms here in America are being trampled on these last few years and maybe longer. Our First Amendment right is being trampled on. We've seen it with the with Hunter Biden, Joe Biden,
That's right.
crime family. We've seen it with COVID-19. We've seen it with the Afghan withdrawal. So Department of Justice and Department of Homeland Insecurity, I call it, is partnering with social media outlets around the U.S. for the last God only knows how many years to curtail our freedoms. That can't happen here.
Right.
I've traveled the world. I've been to East Africa 3 times in the last year, Tanzania and Kenya.
Now, what have you gone there for? What's your?
So I'm doing teaching and mentoring East African nation countries in the area of transnational crime. So myself, Homeland Security officials, and others, we are mentoring those countries because right now crime in East Africa, throughout Africa, is rampant, and there's 20, I'm going to say 21, 22 shadow wars going on tonight in Africa with our military. AFRICOM. AFRICOM, our military is involved in about 22 wars going on right tonight in Africa. No one talks about it.
Yeah, how come we don't hear about this?
Thank you. I don't. That's a good question.
Yeah.
But I can tell you tonight there are 22 shadow wars going on. Shadow wars meaning it's not official wars, but our CIA and other special operators are partnering with host nation and trying to take out the Muslim extremists throughout Africa. They're on the march, Bill. I can tell you that the Muslim extremists in Africa are on the march in Africa, and we need to understand that the threat in Africa is real, and the threat that poses to the homeland is real because, you know, globalization is great in one respect because we get to buy cheap jeans and cheap
Right.
other products.
You buy them and have them here by this afternoon. You buy them in the morning, they'll be there by the afternoon.
But the bad guys love globalization. Transnational crime groups, and there are hundreds of them, and terror groups, and there's about 80 terror groups worldwide, 80, love trade,
Right.
travel, and telecommunication. I call it the 3 T's. I coined it the 3 T's: trade, travel, telecommunication. They love it because they can get on a plane tonight in Afghanistan, landing in Paris, and from Paris being in New York within 24 hours.
And not get caught over there.
Right, because who's in charge over there, Bill?
The terrorist.
Taliban. That's right.
They're able to get out and travel freely out and be able to hide in America using our freedoms, our liberties in such a way that they escape. In the meantime, Americans are put in danger.
Absolutely. And so think about this. The Taliban, a terror group, is in charge in Afghanistan right now. Who's controlling the border? Who's controlling the passports that they're issued? Fake passports, Bill.
The same terrorists that are trying to escape have probably a brother, cousin, or somebody that they're related to or good friends with or doing business with to be able to get out in a way to help move the money.
Yep.
And well, I say move the money, but be able to help escape what's going on over there, get over here where they're safe.
Absolutely. And a couple of things on Afghanistan. There's been a lot of talk about Afghanistan, but I want people to understand the Taliban right now have an endless amount of money coming into their coffers tonight via
How's that?
The heroin trade. It's off the charts. We're talking billions of dollars that they've earned this year alone. Billions. At heroin, we're talking hundreds of thousands of kilos of heroin produced up, destined for where? Here.
America.
Hundreds of thousands.
Up through our southern border?
Absolutely. And you know what? I have a report here right here in front of me. I happen to have it from SIGAR. I've worked with SIGAR, and SIGAR stands for Office of the Special Inspector General for Afghan Reconstruction. Now, they've been in effect for about 20 plus years. Congress developed them, operated, kind of blessed them. And there's an inspector general. And, in this November 9th report, Bill, I just want you to know that he reports, the inspector general, who oversees fraud, waste, and abuse in Afghanistan, and I've worked with them when I was the attaché in Dubai. He reports on November 9th, anybody can Google this, November 9th, 2022 letter to Congress. He writes a letter to Congress. $57.6 million of funds have been left behind to the Taliban.
Unbelievable.
He also reports.
He always makes money selling all of our military equipment that was left over there.
He also reports, Bill, that's at least $7.1 billion worth of military equipment left behind.
That their Afghans are probably selling to our enemies and putting the cash in their pocket that they're going to eventually use against us in the war on terrorism.
Yep. And let me just end with this on Afghanistan. This is again November 9th, 2022 report from from the Inspector General to Congress. I'm going to quote here. We encountered unreasonable delays and a lack of cooperation from the DoD, State Department, and USAID throughout the course of this past evaluation, which limited our ability to respond comprehensively or in a timely manner in your request. I'll go on to the last paragraph. This lack of cooperation is a stark deviation from the cooperation that SIGAR received from both agencies over the course of the prior decade. Our detailed replies to state and USAID's justification for their non-cooperation are reproduced in Appendix 3. He's basically saying, just like Joe Biden's been doing, Joe Biden's instructed Treasury, DoD, and the State Department, USAID, not to cooperate with the Inspector General for Afghan release because he doesn't want the American people to know the details of the fraud, waste, and abuse that's been going on in Afghanistan. I have it right here in front of me.
How did you get the report?
It's online. Anybody can look at it.
Yeah.
Go to again, SIGAR, 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 and this guy releases monthly reports, and this report is staggering. He's saying, "Hey, Congress, you appointed me as the Inspector General, and I'm supposed to report fraud, waste, and abuse by individuals and companies and agencies. I can't get any. This is the first time that I can't get any cooperation from DoD and State Department."
Yet he's got all the goods right there.
Yeah,
I'll say it that way. Eric, how do you operate on official capacity now? I mean, you're not working as a diplomat anymore. You're not in that system anymore. How do you work now? I mean, are you just hired as an independent contractor now?
Yeah. Right now, I'm hired as an independent contractor. I taught as an adjunct professor at the Massachusetts Maritime Academy on Cape Cod, and right now I'm an independent contractor working for an organization, traveling to East Africa, like I said, helping East African nations in the area of transnational crime. And, right now, actually for the last few years, I kind of feel like the Paul Revere.
Yeah. You're stealing my thunder, but I want you to go ahead. You're already reading my mind with this next question. Go right ahead. I might have lost the connection a little bit there, Eric. You're right now. I can't hear you, or
Kind of like
there you are. You're back now. Go ahead.
back.
Yeah, you're back. I lost you for you. You said you're kind of like a Paul Revere. I said you're kind of stealing my thunder, but you're also reading my mind at the same time. Because now you're kind of like coming out with all this. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, exactly. I see my role really. I'm 57 years old right now, and I figure I got a few years left in me.
Absolutely.
And I enjoy educating people and sharing the truth, because the truth shall set us free. I'm not a politician. I'm not looking to run for governor or mayor or what have you. And
Yeah.
I want the American people to know the real dangers that we face and how to live a switched on life. And
Keep coming back to the book. I love that.
what's that?
You keep coming back to the name of your book. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to sell the book, but it's my mantra that it actually, if I wasn't switched on, Bill, and this is no hyperbole, if I wasn't switched on in my professional career and in my personal life, I'd be dead today.
How would you be? How do you think you would have died?
Well, on the street, I would have maybe made a bad choice and gotten killed operationally. When you're involved in undercover operations, you got to be switched on and read bad guys. And if I would have read certain situations the wrong way, and not the right way, if I wasn't switched on, then it could have gone bad. And I know agents who've gotten shot and hurt because they weren't switched on when they should have listened to their God-given instincts and done the opposite. And they didn't. And plus, in my personal life, as we all do, we struggle. I lost my hero, my dad, at 15, my twin brother at 28. And we're all faced, each and every one of us are faced with struggles, hills and valleys of
Right.
life. And so, and I'm no different. And so I say, if I didn't have my principles, Bill, for what it's worth, that have kept me alive is the mind, body, and soul principle. And they're equally important. They all have to be fed. They're interconnected.
Right. I get
And
that.
so
Yeah.
and so people have to understand that you can be a marathon runner, you can be a bodybuilder, but if you lack faith, you're off balance. If your diet is, your sleep is not proper, then you're off balance. So the mind, body, and soul is all very well needing to be fed every day.
So when you say switched on, is it kind of like I don't want to use the word woke. Of course, the left uses the word woke, meaning being awake to their ideologies and their narratives, where, here on the right, not necessarily, and I hate bringing up that sometimes the right and the left, because I kind of think that most Americans are kind of more in the middle. We're more moderate.
Yeah.
We lean one direction. We kind of adhere to one thing, but most of us even have more in common than what we really actually realize. So
Amen.
when you say switched on, is it kind of your way of saying be informed, be involved, get involved in what's happening, wake up, because if you're not knowledgeable what's going on, you're going to get swallowed up by a system that is being used to take our freedoms, remove our liberties in such a way that it's being done behind the scenes, that one day we're going to wake up and go, I wish I would have been switched on.
There you go.
And I didn't even read the book yet.
Well, that's essentially it. So what I say, so you're absolutely right. So I want people to understand that the mind, so one of the core principles, the mind, it starts with the mind. The most
Right.
important muscle is the mind. So we often wonder, gee, why is our country the way it is right now? It starts with us as individuals, and then our families, and then our communities, and our cities and states, our country. We as individuals are not well right now. That's why I'm saying America needs a colonoscopy.
Oh wow, that's pretty serious.
We need a colonoscopy, Bill. We need to cleanse. We need to cleanse as individuals. We need to cleanse in Washington, D.C. And it starts with us as individuals. We lead the world in fatherlessness.
Wait,
We're godless.
What's that?
We lead the world. We have no fathers here in America. We're a godless society.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. Yes.
And 1 million people have died from overdose in America since 2000, Bill.
Wow.
That's the size of Jacksonville, Florida, gone. Dallas, Texas, gone. 1 million people overdose. So I'm sorry, suicide last year.
Do you think it's just fentanyl, the overdosing?
Yeah, fentanyl, cocaine, but mostly fentanyl.
Yeah.
That's coming in from a lot of the chemicals is coming from China into Mexico, and then into the U.S. And it's a cat and mouse game. I mean, we're talking tens of thousands, not just like 600 kilos or 1,000 kilos. We're talking tens of thousands of kilos entering America every month.
Not to mention that some of it originated in Afghanistan, which America abandoned, going through our southern border, being brought in by, fentanyl we know is being created in China, and it's being brought from all over the world funneled through our southern border in such a way that now it's killing Americans. While my previous guest, we talked about, how media uses much of the narratives and the ideologies to change the thinking of Americans to be able to destroy us from within. And now what you're talking about is a more macro worldview with your diplomatic experience, your time around the world, to kind of say, hey, those chess pieces that are going on, inside of America to remove our values and our way of thinking, to dismantle us from within, are actually being maneuvered by the people in other countries, that are seeking to destroy us also.
Right. I mean, they see America very weak right now. We're weak. There's no
I agree with you 100%. Absolutely.
and I've sat across the table from terrorists and from criminals, and I know how these people think. We are so weak. They're like the bully on the block. We are
Right.
so weak. We're so weak right now. The cartels love Joe Biden because they're making billions of dollars from human trafficking, from the fentanyl smuggling, because of the open borders. Billions.
People are still crying about and I don't mean this in a negative way or a soft or try to downplay it. People will still talk about slavery and wanting reparations for slavery that happened, 200 years ago and more, but they don't talk about the modern day slavery. They don't really talk about what's happening to humans today, and whether they're white, black. Of course, right now, mostly white, and that doesn't make a difference. It doesn't matter whether it's white or black. My point is, there's more people in slavery today. And my next guest, by the way, that I've got coming on at 8 o'clock is going to talk about that. I don't know if you know who that is or not. He's going to talk about how much sex slavery, sex trafficking is going on in America today, and coming up to our southern border.
Yep.
And that's another way to dismantle our country.
Bill, listen, there's 328 official ports of entry, 328 ports of official entry. Bad guys go where it's soft. And right now we're paying attention to the southern border. No one's paying attention to the northern border. No one's paying attention to the seaports. No one's paying attention to the ships that come into America. We are soft right now. And I can tell you that human trafficking is not only on the rise here in America, but throughout Africa. And you know what's on the rise and out throughout Africa is baby trafficking and organ trafficking.
Right. Exactly.
I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand in South Sudan and other parts of East Africa. So there are bad guys out there scheming to hurt us every day, from human traffickers to drug smugglers to child pornographers to counterfeiters who are importing their counterfeit drugs into America. You name it, Bill. And that's why we need border security equals what? National security.
Right.
We learned that lesson the hard way on 9/11, and unfortunately, we're 2,977 people died on 9/11. I was an agent on 9/11. I was in Washington, D.C. We're going to, unfortunately, I have a funny feeling, Bill, we're going to have to learn it again. And this time, they wanted to take down America that day on 9/11 if they could have. And I'm not sure what's going to wake up America these days, because right now we are soft and the bad guys know it, from Iran to Sudan, South Sudan.
They're watching our news. They're seeing people more concerned about the narratives of who, if you're making a cake for a transgender couple, or if you're worried about the library that's got pornography in it, or what your concerns are. And people's concerns aren't about national security, because everybody is fat and happy right now. As long as you get your Amazon, package on time.
Yeah, sure.
You ordered it this morning, you're going to get it this afternoon. You're happy, And the sad part about that is we get distracted by the media, and then of course there's the people that are awake, who, as you say, are what?
Switched on, baby.
Are switched on. Their voices aren't being heard because they've made the switched on people to be the ones that are really the haters.
That's right.
And
and
in the meantime, they're winning.
yeah, and whew, there's so much to say. I mean, the media has such a major role to play in the current state of affairs, Bill. The current state of affairs, the media has a role to play. And Malcolm X said it best, Bill. The media is the most powerful entity in the world. They have the ability to make the innocent man appear to be guilty and the guilty man appear to be innocent. That's power because they control the minds of the masses. And right now, we have a president, basically, sadly, an unindicted co-conspirator in a money laundering fraud
That's right.
operation. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, Joe Biden, as the vice president, used his office to
Exactly.
enrich himself. It's clear as the nose on my face.
And what gets me aggravated is how many people think that the last election was safe and secure. And look, I'm gonna play the middle just a little bit on
Yeah,
this
yeah.
because I get it. I got a lot of people say that don't believe that it was anything other than safe and secure. But when you look at all the things around it, can we not agree that there is something wrong?
It was rigged.
If a guy that was as we all know, it's now proven, and we can see that. And it's funny because there's still people that are, oh, it wasn't ever proven. I'm like, no, when all these stories come out about what Joe Biden was doing, get rid of the prosecutor, you get your billion, all these things. It's out there. When we look at that, can't we all agree that maybe, just maybe, there's a problem with elections? There's a problem with our national security. And if we don't wake up or get switched on, we're all going to be in trouble.
Yes, sir. I mean, we saw a classic psychological operation this last election, and even in the last few years, right?
Exactly.
A psyop. What the Democrat Party, that I call it the Communist Democrat Party, Bill, and, and and you're like, well, listen to what they did. They partnered with social media outlets to change the narrative, to influence the American people that was what was right was wrong and wrong is right. That's classic psyop operation.
Exactly.
And so the American people cannot allow this to stand. That's why I'm saying, the FBI, the Department of Justice, and Homeland Insecurity all need a colonoscopy, and I wouldn't mind seeing them abolished. I wouldn't mind seeing the FBI abolished, or, or I don't know what's. I can tell you,
Well,
Biden will be impeached, in my opinion. Hunter Biden will take a plea guilty to something. Um, and the American people need to regain its trust in federal law enforcement and the Department of Injustice. And right now, we don't have it.
are there enough people in the system, do you think, to change it from within, or do you think it just needs to be flushed out?
I just think it needs to be flushed out right now. I think, Bill, I got to tell you, over the course of these next 2 years, and you can have me on in about a year from now if you want.
Well, I'm gonna have you on indefinitely.
When you see
Absolutely.
when you see it all comes to fruition, because what the real story is, that the corruption is deep, and the real elephant in the room is, what did the Department of Justice and the CIA and the FBI know of the Biden crime family, and when do they know it?
Or is it that infiltrated that there's enough Democrat elected officials over the past 20 years to have hired enough people in place, move them up the ranks in such a way that they're able to say to their subordinates, we're not going after Hunter. We're not going after the president. We're not going after this person. We're not going after that person. Is there enough levels of corruption or enough levels of people that are able to stop that from happening? Is that what you're telling me?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's difficult. I can tell you that when I was investigating the CIA for obstruction of justice,
You
19
investigated the CIA?
yes,
What department were you with investigating the CIA?
I was with Treasury, the United States Customs Service, and we were looking at, as 1811 special agent, we were looking at tech transfer to China, the illegal exportation of military technology to China to help in their missile program. And we discovered that Hughes and Loral, two gigantic defense contractors who happened to be one of the biggest donators to the DNC and Bill Clinton, were involved in this illegal operation. And we were looking at them, and CIA knew it, and they were working with us. And then they went behind our backs to give the targets a roadmap to our investigation to protect their sources. And now this is in the Washington Post. Now I can talk about it. This is front page, Washington Post, New York Times. But I was the agent, one of the agents in charge of that investigation. And I spent months at Langley. And because the general counsel of the CIA at the time, a guy named Bill McNamara, friends of Hillary's and Bill's, he's the one that authorized the heads up to the targets. And so at the end of the day, the DOJ was like, well, we had a grand jury. We had a grand jury sitting in Washington, D.C., but the DOJ didn't want to prosecute any CIA officials.
Didn't want to, or were there people, again, appointed years earlier by prior administrations? Because we all know that DC is all very what's the word, incestuous. You
Yes.
know,
Yes.
there, when you look at the who runs what department, who's
Yes.
related to who.
Yes.
Well, that person's related to CB,
Yes.
the NBC president. You
Yes.
see this. Are there enough interconnections, incestuousness? I'll
Yes.
say I'll just use that ugly word. That they can say, "Hey, that's my cousin, that's my brother, that's whatever." Don't
Well, I
go
think,
after.
yeah. Well, listen, Bill, to cut to the chase, yes. Unfortunately, I think we've seen that with Hunter Biden. Anybody else would have been charged with a crime by now. It's been how many years since Hunter Biden and the FBI had Hunter Biden's laptop where it showed human trafficking, alleged child or kiddie porn on that laptop. I can tell you those charges would have been filed within months of getting that laptop, because I've done it and I've supervised hundreds of agents, and that's the protocol. And so you're right. The deep state, if you will, is certainly alive and well in Washington D.C. without a doubt, and that's why we haven't seen an indictment of Hunter Biden or a charge of Hunter Biden. Because if it was you or me,
That's right.
we would have been charged. If it was me or you with Hillary Clinton's server at a house with top secret SCI, secret compartmentalized information on a server at my house, I would have been arrested.
And now, well, and again, we all see the outcome of the, I guess, the fruits of being connected.
Yep.
Not that we
Yeah.
don't know this as humans, but the reality is this is our government.
Right.
These, and we don't have enough people switched on, saying, "Hey, this is what's going on. Let's wake up others." And the reality is everybody else is too busy, so we get a lot of complacent people. My last interview, we talked about how conservatism, brings a lot of people together. But the problem with conservatives is many of them, while they're conservative in nature, conservatism is in itself a more of a peaceful libertarian mindset.
Yeah.
Where they go, well, we believe in being fiscally conservative, but we're not going to go protest the Capitol because we might get accused of being a J6er or whatever, and we'll end up, being locked up in the key thrown away.
Yeah. Yeah. You made some great points there, Bill. I just think it's important that the American people need to get switched on. And if I can share my principles with you, I'd love to do that.
Please do. Please share those.
So I mentioned earlier, it's the mind, body, and soul. And so, real quick, I'll give you the executive summary. The mind is a muscle. Train it, exercise it. Bruce Lee said it best. If you don't, you die emotionally and physically. So, as you think, so shall you become. So, our mind is a weapon. Use it. Use it in a good way, obviously, and train it. And that means resting properly, sleeping properly, meditating properly, learning a new skill, exercise the mind.
Mhm.
And so, I can tell you, when my mind was weak, feelings kept me in bed, but a strong mind told me to get up. So strengthen the mind, and then the body, sleep, eat, and exercise every day. We all don't sleep properly, and we know that sleep can actually heal the body.
Right. Exactly.
Plenty of doctors. You can read documents in Harvard, MIT. The benefits of sleep, endless sleeping. Something simple like that. It's free. Sleep. Eating properly. We know the proper diets. There's been hundreds of diets out there. Mediterranean diet for me suits me, but eating properly, and of course, exercising. Exercising improves your mind, body, and your mood, if you will. And then the faith. Strengthen the soul through faith. We've lost our way in America. No one's going to church. No one's praying. And you can't see it, but you feel it. You have to have faith. When your father dies, your mother dies, your brother dies, your dog dies. We lack faith in America. And that life is good, but life comes at us fast and furious. And it's not always roses and petals, and it's difficult. But with faith, we know that it's going to be okay. We have faith. And what I like to say is, when fear comes knocking on your doorbell tonight or tomorrow morning, send faith to answer. So faith to me gives me hope. Gives me hope. And I think so we have to understand the mind, body, and soul equally important, interconnected. And that's what's wrong in America tonight, today, as individuals, as fathers and mothers, as families, as a community. We are not a switched on country right now. We're so off balance. We're not living these switched on principles. That's what's wrong, Phil.
That's amazing when you think about it. Those are just basic fundamentals. That's not even political. That's not even that, and you're not saying, hey, you have to be a right-wing conservative to make it through this world. Hey, you got to be a liberal who believes in the ideology, the narratives. You're saying same thing I like to say is, here's some basic principles that bring people together in our world, things that we can encourage each other to do, that if we're all happier in a way of being, more concerned with ourselves and being happier, we're going to be able to find problems that are solutions to problems just by having found some of those basic fundamentals with others.
Yeah. Well, we can't be people, just take one example. People say, situational awareness out in the street. Now, I'm talking about both in your personal life out in the street, plus your emotional life to being switched on, because the devil is everywhere. The devil's out in the street. The devil's right here too, testing me every day and testing you. Are you going to make the right choice or the wrong choice? Are you going to go left or going to go right? And so when people say situational awareness, be aware on the street and you can't have situational awareness if you're 100 pounds overweight. You can't have situational awareness if your eyesight is poor.
Well, and one thing, I'm going to interrupt you because, and if you don't have faith and you don't have that connection with the higher being, you're not going to get the universal guidance that you get when you make that connection in a positive way.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, yeah, absolutely. You need you need all three. They're equally important and interconnected, and they have to be fed every day. They
Eric,
have to be fed every day. And I can tell you, if I didn't feed my body, my mind, my soul, I wouldn't be here today with you, Bill. I'd be dead.
so Eric, you know, I look at I look at your resume, and of course, as I'm thinking about some of the things we've talked about,
Yep.
you've been a real badass. Like you, I can say that on a podcast, by the way. But when I look at where you've been, Afghanistan, Africa, all these places that you've been,
Yeah.
you know, and you basically have gone with a target on your back. You're working for the Treasury when you're investigating the CIA. I mean, they knew you were coming. They
Yeah.
probably knew you were coming, but before you knew you were being assigned, because they probably knew the guy who was going to be assigning you. You know, you've been to a lot of areas of this world, you know, where like you talked about earlier in this interview, where where we were in trouble, where America's troubles are originating, you know, if I could say
Yeah.
it that way.
Yeah.
You've been in one of those areas where some of them knew you were coming when you got there. They're like, "Oh, that's an American from the State Department." This is pretty serious. So you not only had to have situational awareness, have that faith and that guidance, but can you share some stories that might come to your mind about what you have been through when you're, you know, is there like any is there like a story or a couple stories that maybe you can say, hey, I was exposed to this happened, that might be that might make it more pronounced.
Whew. There's so many. I highlight a
Oh, yeah, I'm
few.
sorry, Eric.
No, no, brother. I highlight a few in the book, and I'll highlight one to you right now, and I'll give you the 30,000-foot perspective. It circles back around to politics and the media, and it was a tough case. So bottom line is, I received information that a defense contractor um, in Massachusetts was hiring illegal aliens, and of course, again, I spent most of my career in national security, and of course, I said, "Gee, that doesn't sound good," because terrorists, if they could,
Right.
they're only limited by their imagination, right? And so, if they could find their way into a defense contractor, God only knows what they could do to harm all our troops. So, anyhow, make a long story short, we infiltrated the company. We inserted an undercover female special agent that was hired. She was posing as an illegal alien. The owner met with her and had a good conversation. We gave him knowledge and intent that, hey, I'm illegal, hire me, go get some fake documents, I'll hire you, blah, blah, blah. That place is loaded with illegal aliens. After about 2 weeks, we took it down. Now, this is about a year investigation, year plus. We arrested 361 illegal aliens at a U.S. defense contractor. We criminally arrested the owner and three executives. I thought, as we say here in Boston, it was a wicked good investigation, but it turned out to be a wicked bad investigation. Why? Because the mayor, Deval Patrick, governor at the time, Senator Kennedy at the time, Kerry, and others all colluded with the New York Times, the Washington Post, the local newspaper, and the Massachusetts Immigration Advocacy Group and the Catholic Church to demonize me and made me and the men and women of law enforcement evil, the bad guys, just like they did to Donald Trump. I was investigated for arresting illegal aliens. I was arrested. I was interviewed because we ripped babies away from mothers' breasts. Turned out to be a lie.
Right.
all I can tell you, and there's a document on my website that I found while I was doing my book. And it was one of those aha moments. I found it. And it was from the Carnegie Group Foundation, Carnegie Foundation out of New York. They did a study, and they looked at how great the Massachusetts Immigration Advocacy Group communication group did against me, how they did a great job demonizing me and others. And it's all right there in black and white, 15 pages, praising their propaganda machine, essentially. And that was hard for me, because I was like, I would come home that night and I would see Bill O'Reilly, MSNBC, NBC, all the alphabetical agents, all news agencies talking about me and the men and women of law enforcement, and how we made a mistake, and how we were Nazis, and how we ripped babies away, and babies were dehydrated. And I'm like, wow, look at the propaganda.
And the agency you worked for at the time was?
Immigration Customs Enforcement, Homeland Security Investigations.
And they put you on this assignment. So they didn't come to your aid and say
George Bush was president. George Bush was president. And as you remember, George Bush was president, and he actually got there was a Q&A session. I'll never forget it. He was in Guatemala, and he was asked a question about my case. And, they were looking, I was just a pawn between McCain, Kennedy at the time, and the White House. And they were looking to try to come up with an immigration bill that helped both sides of the aisle. And Bush said, hey, we're going to do worksite enforcement to put some pressure on Congress to get some change. So Bush did not. I often say, if Trump was president while I executed, because I started the case and then I ran it operationally, managed it, I would have been brought to the White House and given a badge, an award of some sort.
A medal with a rainbow color ribbon?
Yeah, exactly. Rainbow. I got nothing, of course, from the White House. Nothing. No congratulations. Nothing.
And you expose a defense contractor that was hiring over 300 illegal aliens,
61,
not vetting them at all whatsoever, and you're the one who got in trouble for it.
Pretty much. You can Google it. Michael Bianco versus the United States of America, New Bedford, Massachusetts.
Who's Michael Bianco?
He's the owner of the company.
Okay.
And that's the name of the company. And it's all right there in black and white. Anybody can read it.
When he sued the United States government, that's how you got dragged into it.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
When he sued the federal government for coming after him, that's how you got dragged into it.
No. He didn't sue. I mean, we had received information from a source saying, hey, by the way, this company is hiring illegal aliens. I don't think it's right that he's hiring illegal aliens. These are good job. Right. And I think something should be done about it. So, of course, I did something about it. A year later, we arrested 361 illegal aliens, and we criminally arrested the owner and others for knowingly hiring and harboring illegal aliens. And there was a document vendor across the street making documents for all the workers.
So obviously, though, this isn't just on your volition. I mean, this is your boss, whoever was higher above you, said you have to go into this.
Yeah.
Did
you?
I mean,
so the U.S. attorney, in Boston, worked with me, and I said to him, hey, I'll never forget his name. His name was Don. I said, Don, listen, we're going to be politically correct. I said, when we take this down, Don, we're going to arrest all the illegal aliens, and we're going to criminally arrest the owner and his executives, and we're good. Who's to complain? We showed equal justice. We arrest the owner criminally. We arrest the illegal aliens administratively. We're good here.
Exactly.
Yeah, not so fast. Not so fast, Johnny. I forgot that I forgot the New York Times and the Washington Post, who ran stories, Bill, that they knew were false, but they were being fed information from the advocacy group, and they still ran stories to demonize me.
Did you ever find out who it was? I mean, there's obviously somebody behind the scenes that had some connection to this defense contractor who was on the inside. Again,
Yep.
some appointee by some president that
Yep.
is the brother, cousin-in-law, second twice removed of the current president at the time, or whatever. It says, "Hey, this defense contractor is my brother-in-law. He's donating $10 million the next campaign.
Yep.
We got to get him off. Go after this guy here at Caron and get him off of me." Did you ever make that connection?
Oh, it's a great, I love the way you're thinking, Bill. We did see contributions from Barney Frank at the time, a congressman. He received from the target. There was allegations the owner was mobbed up, an Italian guy from Italy. We know, listen, where the raid took place is a very liberal city, a sanctuary city, unofficially a sanctuary city. The mayor that I met with the police chief and my boss knew that this place was full of illegal aliens. But everybody, when I say everybody, that means the DOD as well, because they had a DOD official inside the defense contractor. Everybody knew that this place was loaded with illegal aliens.
He didn't want to lose his retirement now, Eric. Come on. You see, this goes back to something else I like to talk about too. And we'll start wrapping up here.
So that's one example. That's one example.
You have another example?
Oh, no, I could go on all night.
Well, we have to start wrapping up here in just a minute anyway. Yeah. But what's interesting is this goes back to something else I've talked about regularly, is one of the biggest problems with our government isn't the elected officials, it's the levels of bureaucracy that we've got. It is how fat and how infiltrated bureaucracy is, how people get hired to do jobs, they get in the system, they'll never get fired. They're the ones delivering the contracts. They're the ones creating the contracts. There's just, I could go on for days of all the different levels of bureaucracy that's controlling our government. People think it's the bad politicians, and I say, that's a little part of it, but the real problem is bureaucracy. Is how many people are in the system, and they, what, they fly an American flag, they love their country, they stand up for the pledge, they sing hallelujah, they cry when you play the national anthem, but at the end of the day, they go, you know what? This might hurt America, but I don't want to lose my 4 weeks paid vacation. I don't want to lose my retirement. I don't want to lose, if I lose that, I have to give up the house. That to them is more important. And I know it gets more nefarious than that, but the bureaucracy is infiltrated our country.
We're seeing that right now. I mean, we're seeing that with this, with the White House that we have right now. George Washington, on your point that you just made, Bill, George Washington said it best. He said, guard against the impostures of pretended patriotism. Guard against the impostures of pretended patriotism. George Washington said that. Famous quote, right? I mean, isn't that like, woo, wow, that's baby.
That's making me just shut up. That's making
right. But he's so. Listen to the rhetoric that's coming. This last 3 months, 4 months out of the White House.
Right.
Joe Biden said, if you vote other than Democrat, you're a threat to America. You vote, you're MAGA. MAGA's bad. MAGA's evil. MAGA, make America great again. Are you kidding me? Right. How can he spin it?
Exactly.
In such a way that the American people now wonder, making America great again is evil.
Right.
Wow. Adolf Hitler he had his propaganda director, secretary, Goebbels, yeah, Goebbels.
Goebbels.
He said, "Tell a lie once, it's still a lie. Tell a lie 1,000 times, it becomes the truth."
Right.
And all we've heard these last 3, 4 months or more, MAGA, MAGA bad, MAGA equals evil, MAGA equals terrorist, MAGA equals extremists. That's all we've been hearing. And I'm like, are we buying this here in America? That make America great again equals evil.
When we have Americans that still that would rather talk about how bad Trump is and the bad things that he did, instead of saying, instead of holding on to his message of "Make America Great."
Yes.
And that's not me defending Donald Trump, because look, in my opinion, Donald Trump, made a bunch of mistakes on how he handles things
Yep.
heavy-handedly. And
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that. I mean, I'm
Not
not
perfect.
that's not it. But you got to admit, his policies, had he stuck to policy and not his, not the way he spoke to people or how he handled things
Yeah.
heavy-handedly, and sticking to his policies of making America great, we got to give it to him on that.
Amen.
Those are the things that build our country, bring us together, in such a way that because while there's people inside who have their own ambitions and are doing things like you said, like George Washington's quote, it's that weakness inside that I think that the countries and people and dictators from other countries are watching as ways. America's weak at this, weak here. This is how we destroy them. And look, they get in here, we're gone.
That's right. Amen, Bill. Like I said tonight, Bill, there's 80 plus terror organizations worldwide, and it's growing.
Way to take advantage of us.
80 plus. 80. Oh, we hear about ISIS, Al Qaeda, Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, but there are 80 plus terror organizations that are scheming to exploit our freedoms here in America. We can't allow that to happen. We learned that lesson on 9/11 the hard way, with 2,977,000 Americans killed, 6,000 plus injured, never mind the tens of thousands
Right.
psychologically traumatized. We have to understand our adversaries are watching us every minute of the day, from Iran to Iraq to Turkey to Russia to the Ukraine.
Right.
Every day, never mind the cartels in Mexico. We have to, as a nation, understand that the threats are real. The threats are real. Let me just finish by saying, together we will guard against the imposters of pretended patriotism. We have to understand there are fakes out there like Joe Biden, who says he's a patriot. He's not. He's a criminal, unfortunately. He is a criminal.
I mean, look, you look at his 1980s crime bill. I mean, you can look at all the things over and over again in his past on what he's done. But my last question of the night, and a question I ask everybody on my show, is what unites us as Americans. I'll give you this little hint. When I first started my radio show, I wanted to be the next right-wing conservative talk show host. And about 4 years, it's almost 4 years ago, I ran for the state legislature here in Louisiana, right outside of New Orleans. And I knocked on every single door, and I listened to people. And I listened to a lot of people that look different than me, acted different than me, lived different lifestyles than me, different beliefs than me. And what I realized is we have more alike than what we know.
Yeah.
And so we dedicated my show to trying to find those things that unites us. I do tend to talk about election integrity a lot, which some people don't believe in, but I always try to come back to those things that unites us. So I'll ask you, Eric, my last question of the night. What unites us as Americans?
Freedoms. I think our, we've, and I think we're taking that for granted these last few years, but our freedoms unites us. We live in the best country in the world. I've traveled from Africa to the Middle East to Europe, and I've had an opportunity to talk to, like you, thousands of people, interact with good people, and
Yeah.
interact with criminals and terrorists. Our freedom here in America is what should unite us. The ability to say what we want to say and making sure that the government is not illegally listening or trying to shape our opinions. So I think our amendments, our Constitution and our freedoms here in America should unite all of us. And right now, we've seen over the last few years that our freedoms have been trampled on, and that can't stand. That's why Congress is going to have to impeach Joe Biden and hold hearings on Twitter, the Joe Biden crime family, COVID-19, the Afghan withdrawal. So that's what unites us is freedom. We all want freedom. We want to be able to be free and to be able to worship the God we want to worship, like it or not. We want to be able to be free from unnecessary search and seizure in our homes. We want our Second Amendment, which, again, many people around the world do not have. And we have something here in America unique.
It's what keeps us. It's what keeps us safe. You did make me think about one of the questions. Sorry, but as much traveling as you've done to hostile countries, did you ever feel the lack of their freedom or the lack of your freedom when you were there?
Sure. From Afghanistan to Egypt to Dubai. I lived in Dubai for 3-4 years, and although it looks like Las Vegas, it peel back the onion a layer or two. It's not. It's the Middle East, and I have no, as Americans, not just me, but you have no expectation of privacy in the United Arab Emirates, even though it looks like Las Vegas. So,
You see,
I've seen it firsthand. I mean, in that you have no expectation of privacy. There are tens of thousands of cameras from the airport to the hotel to on the streets, and your hotel room is could be bugged and listened to and audio taped and videotaped. So yeah,
you realize it,
you
Eric. Thank
realize that you're not in Kansas anymore. You're in the
you,
Middle East.
or Vegas for that matter. Eric, I thank you very much for your time, and I really appreciate it. Well, when I
Thank
end
you,
the
brother.
broadcast, I want to talk. I'll talk to you for another minute offline, But I really appreciate your time, and this interview people can watch it on Rumble. They'll be able to watch it on Cloud Hub. I'll put it back up on Facebook, on there. I take the audio, I make it into a podcast, so people who want to just listen, will be able to listen. I'll share all those links with you. You also have a podcast too, I think, right?
Yeah, I occasionally do a podcast show, and my website has a lot of articles that I've written. I think it's important that the American people read some of those articles and get an inside glimpse of the state of affairs, not just here in America, but worldwide, and the need to be switched on.
One more time, what's your website?
Switched on life, brother. Switchedonlife.com.
Yeah, I've been having at the bottom the whole time. All right, Eric, hang on 1 second. Everybody else, thank you so much for watching tonight. And again, please share the interview, share the podcast, go check it out. And everybody else, we've got another show coming up here in 15 minutes, another one that I think you'll like, and tune in for that one next. Thank you so much.